take is that science is decentralized, at least in principle. Because the fundamental elements of science is that anyone can research anything and then jointly, as a system, as a community, we build on top of each other. So everybody is standing on shoulders of giants, and nobody is going anywhere alone. The issue is that while in fundamental principle this works, there's an issue when it comes to practice, which a lot of scientists probably often do. And this is why I have here the four horsemen of the science centralization apocalypse. There might be a little horsemen more, but this is the ones I thought of when doing this presentation. And then first is funding, obviously. Technically, you could research anything, but if nobody pays for it, nobody pays for equipment, for your researchers and everything, there's really nothing to do. DeSci DAOs, for example, Beta DAO with longevity research is targeting this. Having the principle that not just if some corporate decides, well, what you're researching is actually conflicting with our best-selling product, so we're going to shut it down, whether you can leverage funding then. Another one is the process of review and publishing, which is very centralized, and there's projects like Gosh working on that, making it more accessible and decentralized, also from an infrastructure perspective. There's information access, which means that if I don't have any affiliation, a lot of the research is hidden behind a paywall, and I don't benefit from the research, which is a huge problem. And the last one, something which Oksana might talk about later, is the power of institutions in science, so that scientists which don't have affiliation to an institution because they have to leave the country because of war or any other things, they really have a really hard time getting back into the research and doing what they're passionate about. This brings us to DeSci DAOs. And DeSci DAOs here are in a very peculiar place because, as I said in the beginning, science is decentralized and a lot of researchers understand this. They understand the value of decentralization, and you don't have to explain everything from the ground up to them. But unlike other protocol DAOs like MakerDAO or just something in DeFi, you cannot just live in your own bubble. You need the structures, you need the government, you need regulations, you need traditional institutions, funding, and all of this to work together to disrupt the place from the inside out, right? So you need to work with the structures that you already have. You can't just like diminish them and say, okay, we don't need what's existing. And this puts the DeSci DAOs in a place where they can't just do as they please, but they need to find systems, and this is where it comes into governance, how to make decisions, how to organize themselves in a way that works together with the real world. And this is essentially why governance. So the issue is with governance, that governance is basically just making decisions in an organization in some shape or form. And whether you like it or not, you will always have to deal with governance, even if you're not aware of it. And governance, and if you do get it right, it makes a substantial difference in the success of your project, because at first it can make sure that you don't just like diverge in chaos and get nothing done. And if you set up your governance properly, if you're transparent and secure in this governance, you can also avoid or mitigate a lot of the legal and regulatory risks which DeSci DAOs face because they're not in their own bubble, because they're attached to find the financial system, to regulatory bodies. And centralization essentially is always an attack vector, which in the real world can be mitigated by laws, regulations, and standards. And in DeSci, with people being anonymous, this is where it's very difficult. So after this short introduction, I'm just gonna do a little intro on why I'm here and why I'm speaking about this. Because what I'm working on with Q is basically establishing the infrastructure for setting up governance systems that work both with Web3 as well as with the traditional system. And how we do it is fundamentally these three pillars. The first is constitutions, so having written rules underlaying the structures of what you're doing, and transparency. Expert panels, which is just organizations, sub-DAOs, committees, however you want to call it, and then using on-chain governance to just put the icing on the cake and make sure that everything comes together securely and nicely. Constitutions itself, as the first element, bring three fundamental benefits. First is they increase security and transparency. Second is they protect from arbitrary legal overreach. And then third is that they benefit an organization with robustness and flexibility. But to take a step back, at first, like, what is a constitution even? A constitution, at least in this context, is a piece of written documentation in human readable language, so not a smart contract, but just maybe human readable contract or a white paper even, depending on how strict you are with that lays out how an organization works. It lays out what's the purpose of what you're doing, who are the stakeholders involved, who has how much power of these stakeholders, and then bringing that all together, how are decisions made. And this is really crucial. And then on top, you can also add how to resolve disputes in your systems. And then this ties into protection from legal overreach. It doesn't only provide transparency within the organizations of people working in the DeSci DAO, agreeing on what they're doing and how stuff happens, helping them with onboarding, but also people from the outside looking in don't need to find arbitrary boxes to fit in your organizations because they really transparently at hand have a description of what's going on, who has how much power, and then say, okay, I'm going to resolve my disputes with the ICC, International Chamber of Commerce. Then they know, okay, maybe it's not my jurisdiction here. I don't need to play with it. I don't need to deal with it because they agreed on something I understand. Last point, robustness and sustainability touches on amendability. And Konstantin already mentioned that you need to pay attention in the beginning to get your stakeholders right, get your decisions right. But it is mathematically impossible to understand virtually all parameters that might arise in the years of operations. So you need to have within your structures described processes how to amend these structures and how to change your system. And this is the case what we see with Aragon right now. The fact that the foundation is dissolving and kind of decentralizing, this is not a problem. The problem is just that a lot of stakeholders thought they were in control, they thought they had decision-making powers, but there were no processes to manage this change. And this is where kind of the conflict, and which is why a lot of people felt left out. Then expert panels is a little bit more intuitive to those people without the legal background. They can be used for all sorts of things. One is external representation. So like you have in a company, signers who can sign on behalf of a company. The DAO could elect representation, officially transparent for everyone to see. You can use it for internal organizations, so you don't have DAO voting on everything, like minor thing of operations, which just nobody would use after some time. But you have departments, like you would do in a company, and you can use it as a road to decentralization. Because if you're starting a project in the beginning, and maybe some of you did that, you might be alone, or you might be 2 or 3 co-founders. So immediately involving the whole community on every decision might not be feasible or necessary. So you start with one expert panel, might be just one person making the bulk of the decisions, but then over time, adding more people to this panel, maybe adding a second panel, and then giving the authority of decision-making to different stakeholders, for example, the community. And if you have that set out from the beginning in your constitution, for example, this already increases the trust in your organization and the security. Which brings us to the last point of these three pillars. It is on-chain governance. Obviously, on-chain governance should not be used for every day-to-day decision. So if you can solve it with a Telegram poll, that's okay, right? On-chain governance is necessary for the important decisions where maybe things on-chain are touched, where you're sending funds, where you're minting NFTs, where you're electing members. So the big decisions, changing the constitution, changing the purpose. But then it provides transparency because everybody can see how the process works. You don't need to trust the people operating it, you trust the system. It is secure because it builds on top of the security of the blockchain, and it is independent from other third-party tools because it's just running on blockchain as an infrastructure, and as long as the blockchain runs, you don't need third-party tools. You can build your own dApps on top. But how does it look in practice, right? Constantine already mentioned that when you're setting up a governance process, you need to ask yourself some questions. And a few of them are, what am I deciding on? Why am I even building this organization? What is this DAO about? Who are the stakeholders involved? And then, what are the stages of the decision making where these stakeholders come into play to then grow your system and write your constitution? And as a very concrete example, this is something we are collaborating with DeSci Malta on, is DeSci CC which is a DAO which's purpose is to support ethical behavior in DeSci through attestations and financial support. Right? So you have a purpose there, and you have a lot of decisions which could happen. One is joint collaboration of members on the framework, what it means. Second is certification of projects that fulfill these standards. Then day-to-day DAO operations, treasury spending, and you probably could go with all of these systems. Then you have the stakeholders. You have the community and DAO members. You have projects to be certified, external stakeholders. You have operative attestation panels who is really in the depth of this framework and has some expertise which the community might not be as deep into. And then the Q root nodes here is a stakeholder from the Q system where I'm involved with, which provides external oversight as just an additional measure of security, because if you only use internal oversight, you might have some conflicts of interest of people being, well, on the one hand, they should monitor the system, but on the other hand, they're incentivized to let it go rogue because of financial benefits. So I'm going to look in the next step to the certification process of projects that fulfill the standards. And these are steps on how a decision process can look like. So it first starts with a proposal of a new project to certify. Right? The questions you ask. Then there could be one or multiple other filters. There's the decision on yes or no, do we certify this project? There is the option of an appeal to challenge this decision, a veto being implemented, and then the execution. And technically, you can have different stakeholders involved in each of these stages, or however many stages you add in between of this process. So in this specific case, I don't know, 100 people were interested enough to vote on this, so that should be then relevant for coming to the decision. The decision itself then is sitting in this attestation panel, which has clear rules as laid down in the Constitution on evaluating the framework and doing due diligence on the project, and then proposing a decision on whether to attestate or not. Then comes where governance security comes in, is there's an option for the DAO members to appeal, to say, because the DAO members proposing and filtering this could be part of the attestation plan. So any DAO member can afterwards challenge this decision and say, well, actually, they are corrupt. They didn't even evaluate this project. They just let it pass because, I don't know, they know the guy who founded it, or they are they got paid to do so. And then there's an external veto on this decision based on clear rules laid out in the Constitution, whether this decision was done rightful or not. And then execution is up to anyone because of the process. But this could look any other. And with that said, I'd like to do a little demo. I distributed some QR codes there, which you can scan with your phone, preferably with MetaMask if you have that on your phone. You don't need any specific account, just like any empty wallet would do. And it gets you to this page where you connect the MetaMask and you can claim a membership NFT to the DeSci Ethics DAO. This is for the Istanbul prototype. I'm going to give some time to do that. Also, if you have a computer or so, you can type in the code, but you would have to scan it with your phone to get the code because it's not printed on QR codes. Maybe while we're doing this, any questions to this point on governance in particular on the system, on DeSci Ethics DAO? Okay, great. I guess that's a good sign, unless nobody listening. So you can claim the NFT now. It should have this page and get to the DAO management. You can, if you didn't claim, you can scan this as well. This gets you to the website. If you go through the NFT claiming process, you should get to the same link, and you should see this dashboard. Do you see, or anyone having troubles with the process? Because then I would do it kind of live demo of how it works. Just seeing that my need to change the presentation. You all see this screen, preferably on your own device, if not on my device here. So this is the DAO dashboard, essentially. This is just for the governance. This obviously doesn't manage like day-to-day operations. You still have like forum, Discord, or whatever. And as you can see here, there's a constitution. Currently this is 0, but this provides a clear kind of versioning, which the people can agree on the version of the constitution, supply of how many tokens there are, and then these actual panels. And as you can see here, there's the attestation panel, and it's very transparent to see. And all these members can technically then be elected also by the community members, by the NFT holders. So there's one more check of if they don't do the proper job, they could be removed by the community. They could be slashed. This is really up to the DAO. We have a bunch of parameters for the DAO on voting times, and I'm not going to go into that. And you should see here one DeSci Ethics NFT in the token you if claiming works successfully. I'm going to go to here to the voting power section there. I already did that. So if you here select the NFT you have in your wallet, you can deposit it. Basically, and this is the DAO wallet. This is used for decision making to avoid that during a vote going on, you're not able to transfer the NFT. So you're basically putting that in as your stake to say, like, I'm making this. It's not going to get slashed or anything. It's just to avoid kind of buying an NFT, voting on something, selling it again. So it is in there during the time of the decision making. There's 2 transactions needed. One is the approving transfer to the vault. One is the transfer itself. If we had the constitution, there would be one more transaction, which is agreeing or signing the constitution, which is required for people to join the DAO. This is one other important step to avoid a situation where I just like airdrop tokens to anyone, and then they're all members of my DAO, and I have a constitution requiring them to, I don't know, pay fiat money to me, and then I sue them because they're on the DAO. This doesn't work, right? So people need to voluntarily agree to be part of this whole thing. Once you deposit it, you see here one voting power increase, and then in the governance section, you can create a bunch of proposals. I already did a lot here for testing, changing the constitution, changing parameters, and such. What we're going to look in here is in the attestation panel. I'm going to create a proposal. Sorry, this is a little small. And this is the NFT minting case. NFTs to the distributor. So I subscribe. This could be like external link and all sorts of this. Since it's stored on chain, you probably don't want to type in like all the code, but rather use external sources. And then I choose a function. I'm gonna batch mint. I can also mint here, transfer ownership of the NFT. Really, this is just a case for an NFT. This could be a treasury transaction. That could be execution of code or anything. And then I'm gonna copy the address of the distributor of where you got it from the QR codes, and I paste it in here. Gonna mint five NFTs here. I see the proposal and I submit it. It takes some time for confirmation, and then it shows up there. And then this is also where the community comes into play, because success. You now see here in the governance section at the station panel the NFT minting vote, and here you can click on it, and then with the token, with the voting power you have, vote on this issuance of the NFT. In the real DeSci ethics now, this will not be minting the membership NFT, but this will exclusively be minting the certification. The membership will be something different because you want a broad range of members being involved, in participating in the community, whereas like only a small number of projects are certified. For this prototype, it's the same NFT. So I could also use this for electing new members that may that way. And it's important to say here that this is like the benefit here is the thing of on-chain voting. It only makes sense if you use it like in an integrated system. So if the on-chain, like if you use on-chain voting, obviously the parameters on how this voting should work should also be in the hands of the DAO, right? Because if you have voting systems, but then you have 2 or 3 people who just could change the parameters, could change the voting target and everything technically, then the whole security of on-chain voting just collapses, because nobody gives a shit if you voted on the blockchain if the person who like created this proposal can put any parameter and can factually control it. And then they set like a proposal for 24 hours voting. Nobody was aware of it. It passes, and that's their exploit because you didn't think properly about your parameters. You see here, there's the turnout of how much people voted. This is the community vote. This is the filter first. Then once it passes in 10 minutes, obviously this is for production. This would be a longer time frame. Then it would go to experts voting. They need to approve it. There's a token, and then it passes, and the NFTs are distributed. And obviously, this is just something that then can be leveraged by DAOs for security processes. And obviously, like everyone who minted one of these NFTs or claimed one of these NFTs can create proposals here as well. So just go to the governance section again. Here, you can create constitution changes, updates, add new modules to the DAO, etc. And all of this kind of set. Are there any questions on this process? How this works? Any open critique on why this is shit, or what you're missing, other than UI improvements? Okay. Then going back to the presentation here. I would invite you to think, maybe take a minute or two with the person next to you, if you know them, to think about a different DAO case, maybe one you're involved with, you're working on, just an idea, and then do a little thought exercise of what's the purpose of this organization, what's the decision you're thinking about, and what are the stakeholders, and then go from there. And this is, then obviously you can go really deep into the stakeholder discussions. Yeah.
Could you talk a bit about potential issues facing the security around voting parameters?
Voting parameters. So it really depends on who you give the power to change the parameters to, and what are the processes to change these parameters. So obviously the most secure would be to give it to the complete hands of the community, for example, then have a high quorum of voter participation. So I don't know, 20% of all DAO members need to vote on changing it, and then have 70% majority required. And then that would be very, very secure, because if I don't know, 70% of your DAO, which is not the calculation, but if a huge amount of your DAO agrees on changing the parameters, that's in their will, and this is really the power of DAOs. You want to have the ultimate control in the hands of your community. But problems there are then, if obviously your quorum is too high, people don't vote on everything all the time, right? It's a very few people being like really engaged in the organization. If you ask for too much, you don't get shit done. On the flip side, if you have basically no quorum, you get spammed easily. Then on top you put like the little voting duration, and then anyone can basically in a night push through changes that break the system. So the issue here is really how you set it up. Because if you use whatever the best tools, but your process is shit, and you didn't think about the structure, then obviously the tools don't help. If that answers your question. But
yes, thank you very much.
Any other questions on that? Yes.
So I think that there are like potential issues setting up the so one is with the infra, and one is with the adaptation of the product. The adaptation to the people, basically to the non-Web3 folks.
Yes, because you need the MetaMask and all the onboarding.
They don't know what gas is, and you need gas. You know, again, they just go and buy out with any fiat components. They just need to get the native crypto to their wallet.
Yeah.
This whole setup, the basic setup, and other than the wallet, I haven't seen a proposal going on directly.
Obviously, the proposal process. This is the decision making. This is for the security. The whole talking, discussing the proposal. This should happen before then, right? And then it's just the decision out there. Because if you have like a really big proposal, for example, you have a DeFi protocol, you're changing parameters, you're implementing new code, and you want to have the DAO decide on it, they're going to have a research on how to build ethical projects. Then please reach out to Josh on that. Tell him that you want to contribute. And if you want to look for him, it's the guy in the back right there with the blue shirt. All right, then thanks a lot for listening. Thanks a lot for the questions, and I'll be here for discussion.